Okay.
Okay. And this mute just temporarily.
Yeah.
It's right back
Okay.
on. Okay. Check 1, 2. Test 1, 2. So it is still recording. Pressing stop.
welcome and good afternoon. I heard the hush fall over the crowd. I figured it must be 1:30 and time to start. I'd like to call this Infrastructure Services Committee meeting to order Thursday, September 3rd, and it's 1:30 p.m. And in my welcome and thank you for being here, I'd also like to acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Sechelt First Nation. The issues before us today are obviously very important to the community and have proven their importance over the last 6 weeks. And yet it was a regular Infrastructure Committee meeting for you to watch and observe. There have been no delegations for this particular meeting, so we'll process it and sense that this is your representatives in action. You can watch, see how we behave, how we think, and there will be time between now and any board meeting for you to talk directly to your directors or to the board, or to write and add submissions if what you see today doesn't meet your sense of a democratic response. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated. We do have one more attachment on item 3, attachment that missed the package, but has been handed out. Councillor Lewis moved, seconded by Councillor, I'll start with directors. Director Lewis and Director White. All those in favor of adoption? That's carried. And the first item of the agenda is the report from the General Manager, Infrastructure Services on drought mitigation options. And just as an advance, we'll ask, of course, the General Manager to speak to his report. And we are getting used to a new sound system, but it seems to be working pretty well. And one other thing I wanted to mention, this is being videotaped and live streamed. So if you're concerned about privacy and issues and didn't want your picture taken, this doesn't apply to directors. The camera line is in a direct line between myself and 3 panels over. So stay out of that camera line if you don't want to be streamed onto the internet for forever. After the report from the General Manager, I thought for the directors it would be easier for us if we discuss the drought management plan issue first, and then supply as a second issue. And they're both in the plan, but they're sort of embedded. So just in terms of our own thinking, it might be easier for us to keep the drought management plan and options to one side and the long-term supply into another, and deal with them both today in the first item. I'll probably call a recess after that, so that people who have come just to hear that will have an opportunity to leave. With that, Brian, would you like to speak to the, first, a motion to receive the General Manager's report? Director Knorr, Director Lewis, all those in favor? That's carried. And Brian, if you'd like to speak to it, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This report speaks to, it provides a status update on what was the drought. And as you mentioned, it does speak to the supply options coming out of the Comprehensive Regional Water Plan looking forward. And this report was written on Tuesday of last week, and a lot has happened since then. So the status update that's there is a little bit dated already. We've definitely experienced a lot of rain, and our rain gauge up at Chapman Lake shows that since Thursday, August 27th, we've actually accumulated 231 millimeters of rain. So as far as current water supply status, Chapman Lake has fully replenished. And at our last reading, Edwards Lake wasn't at full capacity, but was replenishing as well. So we estimate we're around 90% capacity right now. We have an advertisement, and we had a news release, and we have ads coming in Friday's paper saying that we're going to go to stage 3 restrictions as of Friday. We anticipate reducing that next week towards to stage 2. So it looks like we have enough capacity now to last through the season. The next part of my report speaks to the emergency backup system, and we are still planning to deploy that emergency backup system. First to do the testing, to make sure that if something like that ever has to be deployed in the future, that it does work. So we have all the material, we have the pipes, we have the fittings and valves, and we're ready to deploy it. The weather has delayed that, and so we're waiting for the creek levels to subside so that we can actually do the installation work. And we have spoken to the province on that, and they are fine with us deploying the siphon system. The next part of the report is speaking to the comprehensive regional water plan actions that have been developed to essentially ensure that we don't face a stage 4 restriction in the future. And the water plan speaks to both the short term, so the immediate needs, as well as the long-term supply options. And through that process, when the regional water plan was adopted in 2013, and we went through the public process, the option selected, and it's on page 2 of the report, shows the floating pump station or alternative system for the immediate needs. And when I say immediate needs, it's to, basically it's there to handle flow, the needs of the community during periods of drought until the long-term solution is constructed. And so the option adopted in the water plan was the floating pump station or alternative system. So, and the board did provide direction to staff to look at the alternative systems. And as well, and then longer term, we're looking at groundwater test drilling program, which is slated to come forward at budget in 2016, as well as the engineered lake option. And the report goes into more detail on the short and long-term actions that were adopted in the plan. I have added that looking at the alternative sources, alternative options to the floating pump station, we have a draft report from Opus Day and Night that looked at the floating pump station compared to a siphon system, deepening the channel, and also looking at microtunneling, a tunnel into the lower reaches of the lake. All the options just look at an additional lowering of 5 meters to the lake. And on page 3, there's a summary of the costs with those options. And the recommendation coming out of that report was to go forward with either the floating pump station or the deepening of the channel based on life cycle cost comparisons, as well as the constructability and the impacts to the environment. But upon staff's review of those options, just because it would be a lengthy process to get any of those options approved, we're recommending that we select just one option if we do move forward. It'll just streamline the approval processes, streamline the engineering, and we are recommending the lowering of the channel over the floating pump station due to risk. It'll be a gravity system. As well as aesthetics, it will look pretty much exactly what's there once it's constructed. And that recommendation is on page 4. Long-term source water supply actions. There's, as I mentioned, the engineered lake option was selected through the comprehensive regional water plan. There was a lot of studies. There was a source development study completed in 2007 that looked at Clohome Lake, looked at Sacknaw Lake, looked at Rainy River. I also looked at groundwater supply, and the recommendation and the engineered lake option, and the recommendation coming out of that fit into the comprehensive regional water plan was the engineered lake option, as well as groundwater investigation. And recognizing that both those options will take time to get approvals, to acquire the land, to do the design, do the construction. So I've just repeated that in the report, that we do have board direction already to move forward with the Engineer Lake option and to enter into land negotiations with Lehigh and the First Nations. Not sure if there's much more I could add. We're just looking for direction from the board.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sure I have at least one question for clarification. I don't know if others do, but could you help me understand the difference between the emergency short-term and the short-term source? Is there a difference between the siphon that you're putting in now for emergency backup and a siphoning system that would be there for what you call the short-term source?
Yeah, I guess technically no. There wouldn't be much of a difference. Sizing, depending on how this trial goes, we need to verify the flow capacity and everything. We're not recommending the siphon. It's fine for emergency situation because it has to be staffed pretty much full-time. So it's not very reliable. If there's any air that gets into the siphon, it could break the siphon and we could lose our flow. So that's why we want to have somebody basically babysitting the siphon system when it's in operation. And that's not it's viable for emergency situation. We don't think it's viable as for operations.
Thank you for that. So I'll do my best to chair this. At various points, I'll have to put myself on to represent the District of Sechelt as well. But I noticed Director Morrow.
Okay, good. Again, just a clarification, I noticed in the deepening of the channel, based on the new dam construction would have to be done at the same time. I'm just wondering if that cost versus 2038 and what that cost might be.
Unfortunately, I don't have the cost breakdown with me, but as you mentioned, the deepening of the channel, if that's selected, that does include replacing the dam because we have to lower the outlet by 5 meters. So we'd remove that dam and replace it. And the other options look at replacing the dam in 2038, which is what we anticipate the life of that structure to be. And it may actually have to be replaced earlier than that, but we have used 2038 as far as costing wise. But that $2.2 million does include the replacement of the dam.
And Director LaBelle.
Thank you, Chair. That answered my question that dam cost is included in there. Just one other short one, just to be very clear, the siphon system is going for testing purposes and then will be pulled out.
Our temporary license, through the Water Act, allows us to keep that siphon system in place until August next year, as well as our park use permit. So we are constructing with the plan to keep it in place until August next year.
Other directors? Director Lewis.
Thank you, Brian. Let's see. So I'm curious in the options that were presented to us on the for solutions to our water supply at Chapman. A lot of them cost money, and I recognize that. But looking at something that is perhaps less costly, is what would the view of doing a berm on the up of the supply side of the channel so that it raised the lake 15 to 30 centimeters, and I give you a bit of the lake is just over 30 hectares, and so that's 300,000 square meters. If you did something that raised at a marginal level like that, that would turn out to be, if it was 15 centimeters, you would get 4.5 million liters of water, which at your projected 11 million per day on stage 3, that would buy you 4 days. If you did it for 30 centimeters, that would buy you 8 days. In fact, that the lake is just a touch bigger than that, may even buy you 9 days. But that's math that I can do in my head. And the cost would be low because you're building it on solid land. You don't have to tear out you replace the current dam, which does have life left in it, and that would, it'd be relatively easy to do. I've done a little research on it. You could even use a temporary product called Aquadam to do that if you didn't want to have a permanent structure in place. So, just some thoughts.
Well, the raising of the dam was looked at in 2007. I believe it was even looked at in 1999 and eliminated as an option, primarily due to the associated environmental impact with flooding additional areas of the lake. So it wasn't even incorporated into the 2013 plan, just because it had been looked at and discounted, not selected as part of those processes.
So what I described to you, I haven't seen in any of our past reports. So I'm curious about that, but also on the environmental level, I realize there would be environmental impact to raising the dam, say 15 to, or not the dam itself, but putting another structure in place that wouldn't be very complicated engineering-wise and would be done on stable ground, because that's a relatively flat shoulder to shoulder in that area. It would have a bit of an environmental impact, and I'm always aware of environmental impacts of taking water, but on the way back down it would have a positive environmental impact in that the margin areas that dry out later on would have a little bit more protection. So I see this as a positive a positive suggestion. So I just will want to hear more thoughts on that.
I just want to add, it is reviewed in detail in the 2007 report. That is in the appendices of the Comprehensive Regional Water Plan.
Just to be clear here, I think that Director Lewis is talking about 30 centimeters, and the reviews that I saw were for a significant change in the dam structure. So I guess he's thinking there's a marginal utility difference on this. So, Director Lewis?
This has nothing to do with the dam.
Yeah. Different way of raising the level. Director Knorr?
I guess over the years we've talked of other different options, and quite a few of them have been suggested wouldn't be viable for cost or whatever. But as far as I'm concerned, deepening the channel is the option that I thought of was very solid a long time ago, but I kept being told that no, it wasn't. And I look now, it's one of our first options, because we've gone through this threat this year, made all of us more aware of what we're up against. So whatever the option is decided today, it has to be ongoing and not just an emergency situation every other year. So if this was to be chosen because of deepening the channel, and we had the right of way to use that by ministry guidelines, that sort of thing, I'd be quite pleased to vote for it.
Director LaBelle, and anyone else? I'll put myself on this list in a minute too then. So Director LaBelle, and then I'll probably follow that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know you wanted to structure things in terms of drought management and supply. I think that they're just so intertwined. I will end up on drought management. Thank you. So we started by acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on Shishelt land. It's very important, I think, also to acknowledge that they were discussing things that take place on Shishelt and Squamish territory. And that the decisions that we make are also within the context of our joint watershed management committee with our Shishelt partners in managing that. Excuse me. I think it's really important to acknowledge the staff work that's gone into in the water department this summer, that they've done a great job in terms of managing the situation, and acknowledge the work of previous boards too, that have struggled with this for a long time. The work of community water stewards historically, and the new ones that we have this summer as a result of what's been going on all over the South Coast, excuse me. We're reaching a point where our growth and our consumption and the effects of climate change are interacting, and in a way that's evident to all of us, right? We have some geographical realities here on the coast in terms of big lakes being far away from population, and the solutions that involve those are extremely expensive. Obviously, Chapman Lake sits in a precious provincial park, which has the effect of protecting the source, and it's an incredible community asset up there. I come to this discussion and this role from a place of resiliency, our ability to cope with change. And that involves adaptation and diversity. I want to look at both demand and supply considerations because obviously they're intertwined, right? That we've shown this summer that we can adapt, right? The community can adapt, and meters with conservation-based rates will make that adaptation more efficient, provide incentives for folks to do that who aren't doing it yet. It'll provide data, and it's a recognized best practice in terms of conservation. So it's great news. We have grants. We're moving forward with that. And staff has quoted 25% volume savings and $7 million savings over 25 years, which is significant for taxpayers. And we're looking forward to a cistern incentive program report this fall to support the individual property owners who've really been working hard in our community to conserve. And of course, other conservation methods are going on in terms of education and enforcement and the drought management plan. But the fact that we've been able to change our habits here on the coast bodes well for us, I think, in the future. Growth, clearly a large part of the picture. I think in the long term, it's unfortunate that initiatives like regional growth strategies and LRMPs didn't come through with their promise. And I think it's unrealistic to expect to change what is our dominant growth paradigm in the medium term. I think that it's too ingrained, unfortunately, in the way we operate. What we can do in terms of growth, I think, is pay attention to our OCPs and the smart growth aspects of those OCPs, and move forward in other ways that I'll get to shortly. And I thank the board for its patience here. That was demand. Supply, again, resiliency involves adaptation and diversity. Down the road, we need to increase our treatment plant capacity. And clearly where we put that capacity depends on the location of the source. So that the treatment plant decisions need to wait for the source location decisions. And the source location, in my view, is a great opportunity to put some diversity into our water system. I learned the other day that permaculture principles involve 3 sources of water. It's a nice goal. What have emerged through all this planning and process have been 2 supply options that staff discussed. A mapping of local aquifers and looking for sources there. and the engineered artificial storage lake in the Chapman watershed. Both, I think, are problematic in different ways. Aquifers in terms of recharge and monitoring and ecological impacts are certainly not without their issues. And the two that I've seen emerge from the studies have been the Chapman Aquifer, which is in the Chapman watershed, and the Angus Creek one, which also flows into a provincial park. The engineered lake, there are issues around not owning the land for that, and the availability of land, the cost of building it, and it's, as planned now, would be in the same watershed. Doesn't mean that those don't merit exploration. But I'm coming to, I think, what I think is the key question that our board and our community is struggling with, which is, have we postponed decisions around the watershed or water supply long enough that growth and climate change have intersected in a place that, as well as exploring new sources, and as well as the intensive demand management, that we do need to consider the drawdown of Chapman Lake as a medium-term drought management option. This is something that I don't anticipate a decision on that here, but part of moving forward involves wrestling with that question. We've reached a point where our limited coastal capacity to produce food is compromised, and that's a huge part of sustainability. Keystone species like salmon are on the verge of being compromised. We're having to move fast for emergency solutions, which is not ideal. The 2012 Source Assessment Response Plan talks of reviewing assumptions and risks around climate change regularly and puts the onus for doing that on the SCRD, and that's what we're doing now. In terms of drawdown, and again, I thank you for your patience, Mr. Chair. The 1999 Whitehead study, which was an original impact study for drawdown options, raised some flags, but in my view, not major red ones. And at the time was accepted by the Tetra Region Advisory Committee. I'm all for the precautionary principle. But that principle also applies to other projects as well. And the Whitehead drawdown impact study pointed out, as has been mentioned, that the balancing the impacts on the lake with the availability of more water downstream for salmon. So in terms of drawback options, should we choose to head that direction, then the deepening of the channel seems to be have less impact in terms of pumps and flying fuel and things like that. That if it were to be considered, I would certainly hope for stringent parameters around its use and level specification. New impact studies would need to be done, and public process would need to happen around that. But when the park was initially put together in the management plan, I wasn't there obviously, but from my reading in the park management plan, it talks of the need for a regionally scaled water supply on the coast. And it mentions the potential for new water infrastructure up there, and future resource management actions. Even mentions new methods of land designation. I'm not advocating for that at this point, but I just bring it up to point out that those discussions were part of, are part of the management plan up there. So in terms of moving forwards, I'm interested in hearing from other board members, and that's beginning to happen. And these are not motions, but they're initiatives that I would be interested in supporting. One of them would be to review the drought management plan based on our experience this summer, and look at things like lawns and pressure washing and when they're allowed, and boats and that, and perhaps review our food discussion, despite the fact that it was reviewed in 2014 with a significant amount of public process. I think there may be some learnings to have from this summer. I'm interested in hearing from the planning department around green building opportunities for rainwater harvesting and gray water and those kinds of planning and building initiatives, stuff that's within the sphere of influence of the regional district. And if the planning department has options around layers that will help us pay attention to the smart growth aspects of and water aspects of our official community plans. I'm interested in moving forward the schedule of aquifer research and budget proposal. It sounds like it's coming to this budget, which is good news, and certainly discussions around Engineer Lake, moving those up if we can, but it sounds like they're coming forward anyway. I'm wary of staff capacity and know that that's an issue. And that the metering project is going to take a lot of staff time. Of course, all these things need to go through budget proposals and look through the Joint Watershed Management Committee. So in summary, I feel like the crux of the issue is how we reach for community and board discussion is how we reach the point where, for the medium term, drawdown options as an emergency safety net need to be considered, and from the report, staff seem to think so. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Director LaBelle. I'd like to take the time to say a few things about my positions and the position of the District of Sechelt as I understand it on this. And I want to thank Director LaBelle for referencing some of the early decisions that were made about the park in 1999. Better you than me. But yes, those considerations were all there. And it was a far-off thought and reluctant and not something that people really wanted to agree to, but it was acknowledged that there would be potential regional scale water needs coming out of that park. Having said that, I want to start by saying I'm 100% in favor of conservation and the water metering that's coming forward, and I understand you don't just switch money from one place to another, and just because you had some water metering money doesn't mean you can use it somewhere else. We need to go forward with that and exactly on plan. I feel very strongly that that shouldn't be a wealth incentive program. I feel very strongly that water should not be turned into a commodity and shouldn't be priced out of general available use based on your income. And so I'll be, if I'm here at the board table when we're talking about rates, I'll be arguing strenuously to keep those rates benign and to use the water metering as an information and data source for knowledge so we can adapt based on our understandings and not based on our wallets. I just think it's totally wrong to tell one person they can have a backyard garden and somebody else cannot because of the day job they might have or not have. I think we need to review the drought management plan, having the experience of this last summer. I think we made a compromise decision in terms of commercial farms about 5 weeks ago in this room, and I think some of us would reconsider that decision in various ways, and I'm not sure that we should be privileging inside water rather than outside water. I can think of lots of waste on the inside of a house and things on the outside that maybe should be privileged other ways. So I think we really want to look at the steps of our drought management plan. Having said that, I hope we never get to an emergency drought management plan again. It's absolutely unacceptable in 2015 in Canada, in Sechelt, on the Sunshine Coast, to have people saving their bathwater to run outside and try and keep a plant alive, to have our seniors trying to remember what it was like in the Depression and struggle with buckets of water when they should be simply enjoying the retirement life that they came here to enjoy. So I'm very frustrated with the experience of stage 4 and what it did to the quality of life and to the long-term viability of the environment, the urban environment in Sechelt. I shouldn't have to talk to this board or to this audience about the importance of the urban forest, but you can drive around Sechelt and see dead trees on hospital lawns and streetscapes on private lawns, and it's devastating, and it's been really hurtful for the people that are involved in that. I don't think I've seen as much frustration. There is one episode that created more frustration in 1999, but I can tell you that I've not seen another political issue in my time here that has been as strongly responded to as the drought. And in my view, we shouldn't have had to get here. One of the things I've been doing over the last 2 weeks has been reading the materials as other board directors, and as Mark has just relayed as well, 1999, 2002, 2007, 2012, 2013. And I'm struck by the fact that the assumptions we made 10 or 12 years ago simply do not hold. And the shifting, especially from the 2007 reports and the assumptions there, and the climate change that we're now acknowledging in 2015, only 8 years later, is quite remarkable. And I think we have to review a lot of those assumptions so we take more seriously the rising temperatures and declining precipitation that we're living with that's brought us to this stage. However, we're here. And like a number of other things, it's an issue I have to deal with this year that I didn't expect to or want to. Drought management plan, water conservation, environmental values. This board and this community has turned down the drawdown on Chapman Lake more than one time, more than 2 times, more than 3 times, successive boards. The approvals were in place for a potential drawdown in 1999, and that's so long ago. That's when I was last chair of the Sunshine Coast Regional District. The drawdown was turned down in that process, and by the next board elected, which was Adrian Belshaw, John Marion, Don Murray, myself, turned down decisively. That decision was repeated in the mid-2000s and as recently as 2014 when a different board deferred it. At some point, we have to realize the community really, really didn't want and does not want drawdown on Chapman Lake, emergency or no emergency. And I'm frustrated going past all the literature and finding that knowing that Plan B was never really pushed ahead or pushed forward, but we don't have it. In 2007, page 1718 of the report that was sent out last week that we were reading on the manufactured and engineered lake, this issue should be dealt with at the SCRD board level through formal correspondence with the quarry. Do you think that ever happened? Do we have anything in place to deal with the engineered lake and the aggregates? No. What we figured out was they're actually not ready to go in that area, so we didn't move there, and we haven't done that. So I want to see us fast track our discussion on the engineered lake and the quarry. The issue of diversity of water sources, again, it's been studied and restudied, and there's no new news in the number of lakes we have to draw from, Sackinaw or Clohome, and the number of aquifers in this area that can serve the needs of these people. And the Chapman Aquifer was identified 20 years ago. It wasn't strong then. It's coming from the same source. It's not strong now. So we can't just simply say, oh, let's look for another diverse source. We know what those sources are, and we know the capital costs that are associated with them. We need to have had in place this year, 2015, the engineered lake. It would have kept us from stage 4 and kept us at stage 3. So my argument is to get there as soon as we possibly can. In the interim, I'm not sure of the difference. I'm still not sure of the difference between an emergency drawdown with siphons, which I would reluctantly approve, and a deepened channel, which is a short-term and looks to me like something you want to use on a regular basis. So I can't tell the difference of when we'll draw things down. And when asking questions about this, when would we actually draw Chapman Lake down? Would it be after we got to stage 4? Would it keep us in stage 3 longer, in which case it becomes part of the actual drawdown on a regular basis? I need to know that before I can decide on what we're going to do there. We simply can't afford to go through another summer like this, and all the climatologists are telling us to brace ourselves. This was just the beginning. We can expect next summer, stage 4, at about the same time. For the same reason, there's going to be no water over the winter. And 4 days of rain is great, but we don't know when it's going to come. So I think we're faced with some tough issues. I want to see the engineered lake for supply moved way ahead of schedule, with negotiations starting as soon as possible with the aggregates and the Sechelt First Nation. And for emergency short supply, I think we need to be very clear that we don't draw down on Chapman unless we're in stage 4. It shouldn't be something we build in as a backup for stage 3. Having said that, we do have a recommendation by staff that we move to the deep water channel. I'd like to know how frequently it would be used or when we would trigger the drawdown before I can really discuss that one. And I'd look to any other directors who may have positions. I think the other thing I would say is there's 23,000 people on the Chapman system. 10,000 of those are in Sechelt. And I've only seen a few letters that came through the SCRD board. I think there was 4 there on 3 or 4 on Tuesday. We're getting dozens every day. We're getting emails every day. And the hurt and pain in people's lives in terms of the quality of life they expected to have here and what they had this summer has just been really devastating. People cry when their gardens die, when plants and shrubs and landscaping they put in place for years disappears. And I don't think it's extravagant or demanding or too first worldish to expect that on a small subdivision lot you're allowed a couple of blueberry bushes, a rhododendron, and maybe a small hedge and a few lettuce things. It's just, that should be allowed and expected in 2015 in the first world. We've got the water, we have to build the infrastructure, we have to make sure we can deal with it in that way. And sprinkling and lawn stuff, we've had brown lawns in our house for a decade or more. But you know, there's cedar hedges that we specifically chose cedar because it was closest to the indigenous landscape that we had, and we specifically chose to put in a hedge because we knew that there had been a number of cedars and Douglas fir cut down in that yard in order to build the house. And then we get to this stage where you can't water a cedar hedge with a drip system. It's not going to survive. And it doesn't survive with a couple of buckets of gray water once a week because you're trying to survive it through a drought 4. It's going to change the landscape that we're living in if we can't supply water. Now, I don't think we should be putting potable water on hedges, but if that's the source, that's what we do. So I guess one question, Brian, is in terms of the drawdown and the permanent deepening of the channel compared to the emergency siphoning that we're getting ready for now, would our permits or would the thinking of the supply system be that we actively use the 3 meters we have current permission for and the additional 5, or would we in fact have them in real clear stages that we draw down to our 3 meters and then reassess the situation and activate the deep channel if necessary?
Yeah, all the reports put forward do speak to only using whatever option to draw down the lake further in periods of drought, and I take that as meaning it'll only be opened up at stage 4 if we're going to, so basically allow us to stay at stage 3. So the drought management plan process would remain the same. We'd treat 3 meters as 0 essentially, and only if an extreme drought like this year and in 2012 happens, that we'd go into that additional capacity.
Right. And the main cost saving is that the siphon system emergency version requires 24-hour supervision, and a deep channel, once it's in place, would be there whenever the drought came.
As well as the fuel costs and as well.
Yeah.
So there is that cost as well.
So if I honestly believe there was only going to be emergency every 10 years, I'd go for the siphon system because we used it once and we won't use it for 10 years. But if I believe, as I do believe, that in fact we're in this every year for the next 5 or 10, that 2015 is going to be replicated next year for sure, and probably 17 and 18, I'm favoring the Deepwater Channel as well. Director Noor? And thank you for your patience as I rambled on that.
No, I appreciate all that you said, and we had a meeting for Half Moon Bay citizens last Thursday where all of those statements were made. Concern about a maintenance worker, a lady that it's only her livelihood, that came to me just the other day to say that she has no funds because she can't sell her plants and she hasn't any work. That's only one of many letters I received or answered in the last period of time. But the thing that I worry about all the time is that we're talking about the drought situation. I got other people phoning me now about water meters and the fact that they've been told by certain people that SCRD are going to turn them over to a private company and they will collect the fees. That's not true at all. And the other fact is that when we do this operation, if we do it, the water metering goes along parallel. It's not one over the other. Conservation and drought management will happen at the same time if we go forward. And I think that's crucial. And I want to be sitting here next year at this time and say, whew, we made it. We did the right thing.
And Director Wynne?
Thank you. And I, without restating what other directors have said, I would certainly agree with most of the statements that we are in a difficult situation, and we didn't get here overnight. But certainly what has happened to make it even more difficult is, as Director LaBelle says, we have all of these intersecting lines of change, climate change and others, that have brought us to this situation much sooner than we had thought would be, based on assumptions from previous reports. And that where we're at today is where we're at. And I think that what is critical is that we make decisions and recognize that in the past, the boards, the staff of the SCRD working as a team have worked on these options and investigated and provided reports, and they were all based on assumptions. Decisions were made, but where we are today is that we need to make some hard decisions, and I would certainly support the deepening of the channel one. I do have a question about that, and the water metering. To me, if we've identified such a precious resource in our communities, to not try to conserve it is just folly of us. Why would we take such a precious resource and not only use it, but also incur all of the costs associated with treating it and moving it through our infrastructure, our piping, our pumps, all of the costs with that, just so that it can disappear out of some crack in a pipe somewhere that we don't know. The metering system will be able to provide the data that we need to isolate and find out where those leaks are. The costs are significant if we don't do it. So I also support the metering, because I just can't see that it's worth taking a precious resource and dumping it back into the ground after we've spent millions of dollars to get it to where it's we don't want it to go. So the question I have on the deepening of the channel for Brian is there actually two outlets then, or is there just one channel that we deepen and we draw it down to 3 meters and we can continue through that one outlet out of Chapman Lake, or is there actually two physical outlets? Thank you.
We don't have a design right now. but we're envisioning it'll just be a single outlet. That will be down at the 8-meter mark.
What does that do to circulation?
As far as circulation of the lake,
Yeah, I'm just thinking if you're
Uh,
taking it 5 meters, taking it from 3 meters or 5 meters, does that create some sort of a circulation effect that we have to think about or not?
I haven't asked that question.
Okay, thanks. I did. Director LaBelle, your mic's on, is that? Oh, and Director Lewis first then.
Thank you. Yeah, I have some reservations about the deepening of the channel. I'm concerned about the environmental impact on the lake. It doesn't mean it's, well, I'm just not excited about it. Let's just leave it there. I am really interested in the thought of putting in another reservoir, and I believe that's where the capital should go. That said, I really believe that we have to diversify our sources. We have way too many eggs in the Chapman Creek basket, and we should be looking at other things. So I think that is really important for us to do. If anything goes wrong with Chapman Creek, what's the backup plan? And we don't have one. And that's my big concern. If something goes wrong, what are we going to do? We don't even have a guess. So I would like to see us diversify our sources. And I would like to see us build the extra reservoir. And I'm skeptical as hell about deepening the channel because of the environmental impact it has on the lake. And I'm one of the environmentalists that likes to throw things in front of things, so I'll do that.
Director Noor?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend that the SERD move forward with the design and approval process for the deepened channel option, recognizing that the system will only be utilized during periods of drought and until the long-term source development projects specified in the CRWP are constructed.
That's the last paragraph on page 4. Does he have a seconder? I'll second it. Director Morrow as well. This just trying to find my paper here. I will look for further discussion, but voting on this would be A, B, D, E, F, and Seashalt. Only the town of Gibsons and the Seashalt First Nation are not currently paying into that option. Further discussion on the motion? Director LaBelle.
Can we have it back, please?
It's on the bottom of page 4, and do you want to
Okay,
read it
thank
out?
you.
To move forward with the design and approval process for the deepened channel option, recognizing that the system will only be utilized during periods of drought and until a long-term source development project specified in the comprehensive regional water plan are constructed. So it's meant to be short-term. It's meant to be emergency only. The reality is we know that emergency is going to be here next summer. Director LaBelle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think there's a deficit of information, I feel, around that option. It's from my perspective, it's a bit of a newish option, and one that I haven't seen much on. I know that concerns have been raised around what the parameters would be in terms of its use, and that there's a circulation and concerns were raised by Director Lewis as well. I know we're discussing the motion here. I would feel more comfortable supporting that motion with a bit to move forward with it if I had a bit more information around some of the engineering bits. and also the suggested policy pieces. So I have some concerns about that. I understand that the situation is pressing. At the same time, I'd like to know more about the engineering and policy aspects, proposed policy aspects involved before voting to move forward with it.
Okay. Would it help if I said that the sentence structure to move forward with the design and approval process, that approval process included, well, certainly the design will all come back to us, but the approval process would include board approval? So the motion is to move forward with the design and approval process, and that would include us, i.e. you would get to look at the design, the parameters, the actual work, and those kinds of things. Mr. Soji?
Just on the engineering aspects of it, the circulation question, what was envisioned in the concept is essentially digging out the channel, keeping the material on site, putting in a pipe, and then covering the pipe. And from an engineering perspective, I don't see any issues with having two pipes at different elevations. So it'll just be an additional gate. It shouldn't be that much of an issue. And as far as board involvement and approvals, this will all have to come through for budget approvals as well. So nothing can move forward until that money is approved.
Director Morrow?
Perhaps the motion could include that when it comes forward for approval, when sufficient design has been done to do that, that some analysis of the impact be provided along with that.
Do we build that into the motion or just into our minutes? Whichever, yeah. Okay. Director Lewis? Okay. Okay, so that's moved by Director Lewis and seconded by Director Knorr, that a motion be amended to include that once design and engineering comes forward with further detail, including a discussion of environmental impact. First, to vote on the amendment. All those in favor? That's carried. Any further discussion of the main motion? All those in favor of the main motion? Any opposed? And that's carried. I'd like to also see a motion that moves the timelines on the other supply issues forward, both in terms of exploration of diversity, though in my view that's been done for 20 years and we're not going to find anything new, but let's look at that because a number of board directors and members of the community really want to be assured that we have canvassed the options, and none of us, even myself who thinks the options are low, thinks that it's a bad idea. If we had a secondary source, if we had anything that damaged the Chapman source, it would be great to have another source in line, including tapping into Area A, which is doing well. And we want, so if I'd like to see if there's a motion that we could bring forward that would revisit the timelines in the comprehensive regional water plan. Director Knorr.
I'd like to move a resolution to revisit the timelines in the CRWP regarding secondary sources of water in the future.
And that would include the timelines on the engineered lake. Basically, right now, we have obtained the property rights in 2021. So if we're not even going to obtain the property rights until 2021, you can imagine when it's going to be built and ready to serve, probably 23, 24. And that's simply too long. I think we need to move really quickly on the timelines on that, but also investigating at the same time the secondary sources. So the one second source would be the engineered lake. The other sources would be the aquifer and perhaps Saginaw and Clohome looked at again. Any discussion of that? If seeing no discussion, all those in favor? That's carried, and thank you for that. That will conclude our discussion today on the drought management plan and the supply issues. We will probably come back at a later date in the fall on the drought management plan itself, i.e. the specificities of when we go to different stages and what's included, so we don't get caught in the situation we were just recently. One thing I didn't say earlier wasn't necessary, because I think the board directors all showed in this case that they do take the environmental issues that we're faced with very seriously. It was only 6 weeks ago in this room that we put our strategic plan together and had a long discussion on what the right adjective was in terms of how we wanted to show our support for environmental issues. And the choice in the strategic plan wasn't mine, but the choice of others was that the environment was treasured. And we're trying to reflect those values in this decision as well, even though it's not the one many of us would have wanted to see 10 years ago. I'll call for a short recess so people can leave if they want to leave, and then we'll go on to wastewater and the other, waste management, I should say, and the other issues on our agenda. So 5-minute recess.
topic. It's enjoy it. I want to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon. For obvious
was
don't
long
know
before.
what,
Do we have it?
know.
This one on, but not,
Yeah.
not this. Good afternoon. If we can reconvene, we'll try and get this meeting back on the tracks. Now you'll see how we run a real business meeting. I wouldn't mind Director Knorr. Is he talking or on his way? There we go. Okay, as Director Knorr takes his seat, we'll reconvene and move on to item 3, which is the report from the Manager of Waste Reduction and Recovery on next steps in the solid waste management plan. Robin, would you like, first a motion to receive. Thank you, Director Wynne and Morrow. All those in favor. And we do have an attachment that was handed out. Is my voice picking up if I'm back here? Around there. Okay. Robin, would you like to walk us through some of this?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My apologies for the attachment. The attachment was part of the agenda package for July ISC, so it's just, there's no changes from the attachment from July. So this report was presented at the July ISC and was deferred to today. Essentially, the purpose of the report is to set an implementation schedule for the initiatives that are included in the solid waste management plan. So those initiatives and creating the timelines for them will inform our work plans, which you will see again as part of budget process, but as well as feeding into the integrated 5-year plan, which is a component of the recently adopted strategic plan. I can go through the report further if you'd like. There's minor changes from July ISC, but it's pretty much the same.
To this, the recommendation would be to adopt the schedule on page 6 of the agenda package, page 2 of yours.
The recommendation is to adopt Table 5, which is on page 10 in the agenda package, which outlines the initiatives by year, so
Yes,
including what's
yeah.
ongoing and then what we're currently working on in 2015, and then moving forward through to 2020 at this point.
Director Wynne?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Robin, for this. The A couple of comments, and I will support the implementation schedule as in Table 5. I just have a couple of questions on it and a comment. And first of all, on the comment, in your discussion, you speak of the life expectancy of the Seashell landfill as 15 to 17 years, and you use the word prudent, that all waste reduction and diversion opportunities are explored. And I think that now, having had experience and seeing what's happening on the island and things like that, I think that prudent is understated and probably critical. Should be a much better word in there. And also in light of our last agenda item and talking about water and what's happened since 1999 and all of the things that we've looked at and considered over those years, that we have to be moving forward on all of the opportunities here much quicker. Realizing that 15 to 17 years is going to happen real quick. The overall in Table 5, there is one item there which is residuals management for 2015, and it's got the high priority there, Seashell landfill development and gas control. And I believe that the methane gas project, we kind of abandoned that one. So what is left that is a high priority in that residuals management?
As you stated, that project has been abandoned, so in that sense, as it's presented, it is complete. Where it's listed as high under priority, that's carrying it over from the way it is listed in the solid waste management plan.
Director Morrow?
Yeah, I think the same comment that I made last time this schedule did come up. I think that there's been a long-going discussion on the closure of the Pender landfill, and at that time, a significant effort was placed on the construction of a resource recovery center. It was well advertised that this was the way it was going on. There was an extensive committee that was established, and all this was communicated to the residents of Pender Harbor. As everyone knows, the closure of the landfill was a contentious issue. I have, now that the transfer facility has virtually complete, it is operating as a transfer facility as we speak. I do receive some significant questions from the residents about the transfer facility and where is the resource recovery center. And interestingly, and I get emails, and people that served on the committee earlier. And I actually, interestingly, on this very agenda, I see it on the PMAC minutes, which was interesting to me. I note that the resource recovery centers are still a high priority. So in my mind, I think that they are a high priority. It might be worthwhile to construct one first as a prototype. So I certainly would like to see that moved up to be as high a priority as possible. I did note that there is some room to maneuver unless things have changed dramatically. I do note that some of the lower priority items, and I see those in there for 2016, 2017. Not that these aren't a good idea and something that should be undertaken, but every other week, and things like pay as you throw were identified as lower priority. In fact, in I think 2011, the solid waste management plan, they weren't even considered. So suddenly now they're a higher priority, and are going to be implemented before the resource recovery centers. So I'll wait for the other directors to speak, but in my mind, the resource recovery centers are the highest priorities and should be moved up.
Thank you for that. I'll come back to that as well. And Director White. I thought it was 1, 2, 3.
No, go ahead. I'm not on this one.
Well, I do agree on behalf of the town of Gibson's with the last comment about expressing some discomfort anyway in moving resource recovery centers. Somebody keeps waving at me across there. So I think maybe he's waving at you. Okay. Resource recovery, putting the resource recovery centers up to 2018. I think that before we do that, we at least need to have a more thorough discussion as a board about previous plans for resource recovery, new opportunities for organics and other curbside discussions. I know that previous boards have had very extensive discussions on these issues, especially the original vision for resource recovery centers. As a director who's been here less than a year, I haven't had a chance to be part of that, and I'm representing the town of Gibson's, which has discussed these matters before, but at the town, we are also discussing our direction on how we're going to handle these matters as locally, and also how we need to work with the SCRD to do so in waste management. And in fact, we have a report coming to our council in 2 weeks, in the middle of September. I believe it's even, the draft title of it is even towards resource recovery. So I'm hoping we can have that discussion first when we're looking towards resource recovery before officially moving resource recovery to 2018 here at the SCRD board table. And I think we made the right move last meeting in referring this, but I think that we maybe referred it to the wrong place. Rather than to the next ISC meeting, I would like to see us have more of a workshop conversation, wide open about previous visions for waste management, opportunities in our communities, opportunities to bring things together and coordinate them. But secondly, I think we're in a time of transition right now with our new board, new strategic plan, and we're also talking about integrating plans together. And we've actually got a meeting tomorrow where we're talking about an integrated 5-year service plan. And it makes a lot more sense to me, if we're moving towards integration and integrating our priorities, that we make sure that we're not still operating all these separate plans in different departments in isolation. And so I think in some respects, this conversation should be referred to that conversation, the integrated services meeting at corporate services tomorrow and ongoing. And in other respects, we should be having a more of a kind of workshop style conversation about solid waste management and zero waste and where we're going in the big picture. And I would make that motion to refer, but there's no debate on that, so I think it's better to wait until everyone's had a chance to say their piece.
Yeah, thank you for that, and we'll, again, come back to where we get a workshop. Director Knorr and then Director Lewis. Oh, sorry, Robin. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to highlight the reasoning for prioritizing the curbside collection, every other week garbage, and pay as you throw. Really, it's twofold. The main reason is we have targets that were set in the solid waste management plan, as well as in We Envision, and as well as targets set by the Ministry of Environment. In order to achieve those in those timelines of 2016, we would need to remove the organics from the waste stream as evidence from the results from the waste composition study. So that's a big part of the reasoning, but also the current curbside garbage collection contract will need to go to tender in 2016 to have a new contract in place for March 1st, 2017. so we need direction in that sense for what components are going to be included in that RFP. Is it going to be status quo? Would we look to include every other week? What options for pay-as-you-throw? Are we going to include curbside organics? 'Cause it is laid out in the plan, and this is the opportunity to build it into that tender.
Thank you for that clarification. And we'll go, Director Noor.
I haven't talked with the Area D director on this issue, but it's been a few years since I promised people in Half Moon Bay that we were going to have recycling. And every so often they remind me that I promised them a couple of years ago. And we've gone to MMBC, we've talked to the Premier, we've talked to the President of this association a couple of times, the Environment Minister. What would you suggest is the time limit that we quit doing this and look at doing it ourselves?
Robin?
Again, through the tender process in 2016, if it's board direction to include curbside recycling, then we can do so. And again, we can apply to MMBC for the incentives and run the program that way.
Sounds like more support for Silas's sense of a workshop to deal with a bunch of issues. Director Lewis.
Thank you. I was going to ask Robin about the pay-as-you-throw, but so if you split it up into curbside organics and then garbage, they would alternate weeks? Is that what it would be? Kind of? Is that the vision? I'm not saying that's what we'll do, but is that the vision?
It could be, yes. You would have organics on a weekly basis, and you could have garbage every other week. You could also have organics and recycling, organics and garbage. So there are options.
Yeah, so if it was pay-as-you-throw, would you be paying also for the organics that you contributed to the waste stream?
In short, yes. So a pay-as-you-throw model, there's a couple of different options. Again, these would be presented to the board for what options are out there and which ones we would like to bring forward out to the tender process. So there are several different options out there, but typically the pay-as-you-throw portion applies to the garbage.
Much more.
So that if you're someone that is putting out less garbage, then you have a lower fee than those folks that create more garbage.
Okay, thank you. So, so if you don't put a can out and the truck just drives past, you're paying so much a month just to have the truck drive past. Is that correct? Because you have to have the truck out on the road anyway. Is that correct? Am I guessing?
From my previous experience where they've had contracts set up like that, yes, you're correct in that the truck needs to drive by the street. That's where the every other week tends to benefit the residents that are creating less garbage and then having either different size options. Again, there's a variety of ways that this can be approached for pay-as-you-throw.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Robin. And I just also wanted to say I'm in favor of moving up the schedule for the depots. I think that's an important part. I know that Silas has missed out on the discussion, but it seems like a most practical, user-friendly way of dealing with looking at the recycle, reuse formula. Thanks.
Director LaBelle and then Director Noor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm very supportive and excited about the idea of every other week garbage collection and pay-as-you-throw and curbside collection. I think there'll be challenges with them whenever they happen, particularly in rural areas. However, I think they're steps in the right direction and encourage the kind of stewardship that we need to see happening. I didn't see a referral to the Plan Monitoring Advisory Committee on this particular issue, and I would like to see that. I think I'd be supportive of the idea of a workshop that may help us understand the way resource recovery centers fit with other initiatives and timing and that kind of thing. But it looks like I would definitely speak in support of those three initiatives as they address the pie chart that we've seen in terms of our total waste reduction.
Director Wynne, as I'm listening to this, I'm not sure we're ready to actually support the schedule as we see it. So probably that'll come after we have a workshop. What's your timing on this? When do you need to know exactly where we are? I'm hearing requests for lots of different little modifications and information, so.
If the board adopts a portion of it, so for example, moving forward with the curbside portion, a report would be brought forward showing potential options. So there would be an opportunity at that time to discuss how that could look like moving forward. We do have to issue that tender in 2016, and if there are very large changes, then factoring in the time for the education and the outreach and to have that smooth transition to a pretty massive change over the current.
But that's a year away. That's a year away. It's not next month.
Yeah, it would be included in next year's budget process.
Director Wynne.
Thank you. From what I just heard, I think I'm a little reluctant just to pick something out of here and say, let's do that one, because from what I'm hearing from the board here is that there's desire to look at some of the other things as well, and being cognizant of how much time is available from staff, and referring back to your comment in the report, there's a lot of things that are ongoing now, and then if we start cherry picking one or two things out of here, then what's the impact on that on the ongoing things that we've got already? So if we need to have a workshop on it, then I would support that and see if there's collaborative efforts that can be had with Gibson's, and then look at it to revisit the initiatives and the priorities of them. But just to take one or two and say, let's shift those around right now, doesn't make sense until we get a bigger picture of it.
Thank you. And with the ambient noise, if you can turn your mics off afterwards. Yeah, I don't think I can turn them off one at a time, though. Yeah, but somebody was speaking, so I can't turn the one beside him off without doing. I was going to practice, but I thought not. Silas, Director White.
So I think specifically what went off again, is that staff would like to move forward ideally in looking at some options or presenting some options about curbside organics pickup to the board, and I'm definitely not opposed to that. And I don't think we need to change the plan in order to simply request that report. And in fact, being able to see those options, I think, would be quite informative at a workshop we might have, we would hopefully have, and also quite informative in backing up any decision we would make to change the priorities in the plan. So I definitely support that concept of asking for a report on options for organics curbside collection. And I'll move that as a motion first.
Were you just going to bring that forward anyways, or were you planning on? I mean, obviously, if you're going to go to tender, you're going to bring forward a report before we got there. So I'm not sure if we need a motion to get that in place. It doesn't hurt to have it. Doesn't hurt to have it.
It sounded like staff was looking for us to change the plan in order to justify that report, and I don't think we need to change the plan. If
No.
Either way, I mean, if it's coming anyway, then all the better.
The only part of the plan that I hear is that if we have a very high priority, and it's actually 2018, and we know it was a high priority in terms of the politics of the entire process around the Pender Harbor Transfer Facility, I don't know why we shouldn't think seriously about moving that forward in some way. Because it wasn't, it's sort of been left hanging since they went through that process.
So if there's no need for a motion on, I realize Director Nora hasn't
You're
had a chance
finishing
to
up-
speak
you're
yet,
finishing
and
up.
if I refer this matter, then
So don't refer it.
I won't refer it again, but
Okay.
I keep waiting for Director Nora to speak.
He was going to change the topic, though, so we're waiting. So let's,
No, I'm on the topic this time. The topic is, for me, is when I look at 2018 and the enhanced drop-off and resource recovery in Pender Harbor, I keep remembering the meetings that I attended in Pender Harbor on the closing of the landfill, and I think there was a lot of information or suggestions what would happen in the future, and I would want to look back at that material and see if we haven't stalled the people in Pender Harbor off in the fact that they were expecting to get this done sooner.
and I think that is what we're starting to come to. So then the issue is where we address that, and probably in a workshop where we can see and review the plan and actually see where it would fit. But, Director Morrow, then Director White, and your microphone's on, so I keep looking. We need two colors on these. We need a yellow for people who want to speak, and a red for when they are speaking.
Certainly, it should be a topic of a workshop, and we have to look at everything. I just wanted to make sure that we remembered the issues that have gone through and what was promised. That's what I'm always reminded of, is what was promised many years ago.
I won't make any comments about promising. Director White.
I'll move to refer this matter to a workshop on solid waste, a board workshop on solid waste management, as well as our integrated 5-year plan discussion.
All to happen before the next infrastructure committee meeting? I know. Okay,
Well,
'cause
we know
don't-
one of them's happening tomorrow, and it's on the
Yeah.
agenda anyway.
We don't want to leave
but,
this too
yeah.
long. That's the problem. Otherwise, you don't have a plan schedule that they know is going forward. That was a second?
Yeah, second, I hope to also offer what I consider a friendly amendment, and that would be before the November ISC,
Okay.
given the state of the calendar.
Okay. We want to use the microphones so they're recorded, but that was a friendly amendment to ask that the
So since-
referral
yeah,
come
Since the
back.
microphone wasn't on, I'll just continue saying that that's part of my motion before the November ISC, then it's very friendly. Yeah.
All those in favor? That's carried. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, just briefly. And did I pick up from the upcoming PMAC minutes that it's getting referred to them for the next meeting?
Correct. So since this report was deferred from July and being presented today, it wasn't presented to PMAC before
Yeah.
the board had an opportunity to either discuss or make a recommendation. So this will be brought to PMAC later this month.
Thank you.
No, it's just a referral to the workshop on the. Moving on to item 4, which is the Langdale Dock Agreement, pages 12 to 13. First, a motion to receive. Thank you, Director Wynn and Director Morrow. All those in favor? And General Manager Soji.
This is reports regarding Langdale Dock lease agreement that has been discussed at this committee and board. The direction we received was to work with BC Ferries to amend the agreement to include a local charge for water taxis that run a scheduled service from Horseshoe Bay to the Langdale Dock. And We've received agreement from BC Ferries to incorporate that. And this report's just here to recommend that that fee be added to the, well, we need to amend the establishment bylaw to include the provision to charge the fees for the Langdale dock, and then approval to add the $600 to that fee and charge bylaw.
Thank you very much. A discussion? Director Wynne, do you want to move the recommendations, or?
Not quite yet. I got some
Okay.
questions. In the discussion here, there's comment, BC Ferries has explicitly stated specifications around which water taxis will be permitted. I don't see those specifications. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what those specifications are? And bear in mind that I don't believe this has come before this new board. It was the previous board. So,
Unfortunately, I didn't bring the agreement with me, but they wanted to specifically name the companies that are running the scheduled service. It was our preference not to have the company's name, just because if a new company comes in, then we got to amend the bylaw again. But they, in the agreement, amend the agreement, in the agreement, they specifically note, I believe there's 2 water taxis that are currently providing the service, and those companies are specifically named in the agreement.
So they'll have an exclusive use?
Not necessarily exclusive, but anybody that comes forward would have to basically apply to the SCRD and to be added to the agreement.
Okay, I guess the phrasing of that sentence leads us to think that it could be explicitly stated specifications around which water taxis, if they had in mind what that would be. Director Wynne to follow up and continue, and then Director Morrow.
thank
And the
you.
microphone off to your right, left.
Okay, so it's only 2 companies then that, and this is only for a service between Horseshoe Bay and Langdale, if I heard that right. So if it's any other water taxis, the ones that are kind of on call, they're running from Keats, they're running from Gambier, they're just going back and forth on an on-call basis, they will not have to pay any fee, either an annual fee or a touch fee? Is that the case?
Correct. This is just for scheduled services, and as part of our agreement with BC Ferries, they explicitly stated that they would have the Langdale dock and they would have the agreement with us as long as there's no scheduled service in competition with BC Ferries. So this one here, there is scheduled service just because the demand is there, and because of that, we had a request. It wasn't from BC Ferries to implement this amendment. It was from the public. They wanted to see, I guess the principle is, because it's only the islands that are paying for Langdale dock, because there's other members of the Sunshine Coast community benefiting from the Langdale dock and not paying into it. So the principle is they'll have to pay a fee that'll be added to their fee they charge, that are charged by the water taxi companies, that will go towards the benefit of the Langdale dock. So that's how that came about. And the $600 fee was selected through the previous board, I guess, and accepted by BC Ferries.
Any further discussion, Director Morrow, and then I'll go back to Director Wynne.
I just had one brief question. Who would be enforcing this?
I believe the agreement is it's the SCRD. We would have to enforce it.
And Director Wynne?
Thank you. These operators, do they also pay the $600 fee for using SCRD docks? So this would be in addition to that? Or did I read through here incorrectly? I think there's another $600 fee for using SCRD docks.
I don't think the fee is 600, but yes, any commercial operators that are using any of our SCRD docks are supposed to pay the fee. I don't think we have been very successful in collecting, though.
Any further discussion? Anyone like to move the recommendations? Don't have to. They can die. Director Wynne,
Yes, I'll move the recommendations.
seconded by Director Lewis. Any further discussion by directors? All those in favor? That's carried. That was actually, no, that was all directors voting. The next item is the Keats Island Dock lease renewal. Voting and discussion on this, B, D, E, and F. First, a motion to receive. One of those, thank you. Director LaBelle, Director Lewis, all those in receipt and discussion. Motion to, somebody to move the actual recommendation. Director Wynne. Yeah, discussion. We're not voting.
Thank you.
Oh, B.
Um,
Yeah, okay.
This, this lease is for the entire dock, it's not just the float then, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's a water lot lease.
The water lot lease, okay. And in here, you also make reference to KIMS, the Keats Island Moorage Society. Since 2002, they've paid an annual fee of $900, and I'm wondering when the review period is for that, and also kind of part of that is if this fee for the $210 here, so this for the tenure for the lease, is that going up, and how often are we going to review the KIMS fee, and is it due now or long overdue?
Good question. I reviewed the lease myself, and there is no sunset date, and there is no renewal clause. So basically, it's written as $900 in perpetuity. So the only way to, if we want to increase the fees, is to go through the termination of the agreement and go through a new lease agreement, or subject to mutual agreement to enter into negotiations for a higher fee. Unfortunately.
But currently, we're making $700 more per year. Director Wynne, and then we'll look for moving it forward.
And just to be clear, the float, the KIMS float, who maintains that float, and is there any anything that the float can do to the dock in terms of damage that's going to increase our costs for repairing the dock because of the float being attached?
The Keats Island Moorage Society is 100% responsible for their float and their attachment to our dock. And if it does cause any damage, they're responsible for that.
And that's in the contract?
Correct.
Yeah.
Any further questions?
No, I can't believe we have a contract that's in perpetuity for $900. I'll leave it at that, thanks.
I'm sure that can be reviewed. Somebody to move the recommendation? Director Lewis, Director Nor. Voting is B, D, E, and F. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you. And moving on to item 6, Administrative Assistant Monthly Report for July and August. Motion to receive. Thank you, Director White and Director Noor. Any discussion of the monthly report? Water treatment and waste, we've already talked about them. Director Noor.
Just wondered when the new transit manager arrives, or
The new trans manager, Gordon Dykstra, will be arriving, his first day is September 14th. So we're very much looking forward to his arrival.
Any further questions, clarifications, comments? Director LaBelle.
Just noting that the trash bash coming up on Saturday the 12th, and the implications of good citizens working together to clean up the detritus of people who may not fit into that category. So,
Good citizens and good government, working together. General Manager.
I just want to take this opportunity to inform the board that we were just notified by BC Hydro today that out of all the corporate energy manager local governments, we are going to be recognized as the second, the second best PowerSmart partner out of all the local governments that they partner with. So behind the City of Richmond is number 1, and right behind us is the District of Saanich.
Congratulations. That's good. Any further discussion on item 6? Moving then to item 7, Plan Monitoring Advisory Committee. This is for receipt. There was no recommendations out of there, no. Motion to receive. Director Wynn, seconded by Director Lewis, thanks. All those in favor? That's carried. Transportation Advisory Committee minutes of June 29th. Director Lewis. You can do both. Let's receive and move the recommendations. Thank you. Seconded by Director LaBelle, and you'd like to speak to one?
please, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Angie, perhaps you can help me out here. But recommendation number 5, I'm wondering if it's appropriate to propose an addition to that recommendation at this point.
Yes, you can make an addition to the recommendation or make a new motion to reflect what the desire of the board is.
Are there any other recommendations that people want to adjust? Okay, let's pull.
I think number 5, the statement on there, I think it's Glenn Brown's from Area B. On page 21.
We'll pass that.
Okay, carry on.
It's okay, we're on to Transportation Advisory Committee. Director LaBelle, you wanted to amend recommendation number 5?
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to suggest that now, and we'll take that amendment before we do the others.
Sure. And it's an addition to that item. And the amendment goes, or the addition is, and the letter make reference to, but not be limited to, the example of speed humps or rumble strips in front of rural schools. And the intention there is to emphasize the challenges around school safety. I'm thinking in particular of Roberts Creek School, but I know there are others in other rural areas that have similar challenges. I don't want to detract from engineer traffic calming measures on rural roads in general, but I do want to have those specific aspects emphasized.
You're wanting them to clarify and provide the rationale for rumble sticks and speed bumps in front of elementary schools?
I want to continue to have the clarification on their general rules
Yeah.
on traffic calming policy.
Yeah.
But I would also like to hear, have the letter specifically refer to the example of speed humps and rumble strips in front of rural schools.
Do they exist?
Of not having, sorry, of not.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, what you're trying to... They do not have them at present.
They do not, and what we hear is that.
Some people would like to see them. Okay. Director Morrow, and then Director Noor, and you're fine, you were seconding, okay.
Yeah, I like Director LaBelle's, I think, intent on the recommendation, but I don't know that it ended up reading correctly. And I think that what he intended to say, and just correct me if I'm wrong, is that the motion is really to provide the rationale for not having rumble strips, but asking for an exception in front of schools, because otherwise the rationale applies for every street anyway. So I think you want to see an exception for schools and why an exception can't be granted for schools.
Trying to figure out how to word that. So with identification of permitted exceptions, period. One example of a potential exception being rumble sticks or traffic calming in front of elementary schools. Just call it traffic calming.
Yeah, in my view, traffic calming brings up issues like road narrowing and those kinds of things.
All sorts of things.
All sorts of things, and that is addressed in general in
Okay.
the request. The number of specific examples that are have been brought up to me and I observe around speed humps or rumble strips brings me to want to focus on those.
And so the letter would make reference to and ask specific clarification regarding speed bumps in front of elementary schools. Do you have a sense of what we're trying to get at? Okay, we'll fix it. Director Lewis.
So just curious about, we want to make it elementary schools. Some of the elementary schools don't have speed zones, they have playground zones, but we're going to try and make it named at the actual school site, right? Is that where we're at? I'm just thinking about how it could get ignored if we don't phrase it right.
Go ahead.
I don't want to get too specific because of the intent of the recommendation and of the addition is to find out about the policy and have it addressed at a policy level. Because what we hear is that's not the policy of MOTI. So I'd like to further understand that. Not make a specific request at this point.
Okay, we have an amendment to recommendation 5, which I think we understand but don't have the exact wording, but will have by the time we see it. Do I have a motion to recommend or adopt the recommendations 1 through 8? Mr. Soji.
Specifically, we only need recommendations 3, 5, and 7 to be adopted. And I believe recommendation number 8's already been acted upon.
3, 5, and 7? Motion to adopt recommendations 3, 5, and 7. Thank you, Director Lewis. Director Wynn, all those in favor? Communications, item 9. Motion to receive all communications. Thank you, Director Noor and Morrow. All those in favor? Discussion of the first, Ministry of Environment. Any discussion of the second, which is Green Communities? Director LaBelle?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm back on the first one, if that's
Okay.
all right. Yeah, the thing is there's it seems to be money for packaging that's not getting received, going to an innovations fund. It would be interesting to see some of the innovations that are coming out there, and looking forward to what's mentioned in terms of MMBC, in terms of a full review in 2017. It's an important piece of learning there for those of us who are struggling with that. Thank you.
Are you asking for information on the Innovation Fund?
No,
Okay. Green Communities Committee, any notes on that?
We did good.
Yep. And we can use climate action community branding if we should want to. Good, on our websites and letterheads. And Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, August 14th. This is good news, it's old news. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Just before we adjourn,
Before we adjourn, I just would like to pass on a comment here from one of my colleagues on Gibson's Council, who said that a note to express my appreciation for a high-quality live stream that allowed me to observe today's meeting without the burden of travel time, cost, and associated emissions. Almost as good as being there. I wasn't sure if he was joking about the last part, but I'd also like to recognize Mayor Rowe for being here as well.
I wanted to thank all of you for being here during this session. It was a long one and it took a while to get back on track. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Thank you. Any questions, Jacob? Any questions from the community? Any questions from elected officials? Why is it so long? Okay, thank you very much. And I think the new sound system is good.